Kלים Perek Tesvav Mishnah Base. After that long Mishnah Aleph, this one should be a little bit quicker than that one. Arubois shel nach toimim timeos. We said the rule last time that for a kli eitz to be tome, it's got to have a base kibble. And midoraisa, a pshutik eitz, that's straightforward. It is a keli, but it's poshut, it's got no kibble, is toer. There are some cases where a pshutik eitz are tome. Are some poskim who say this could be a deraisa, but most poskim agree this is only a derabanan. Now the rule for pshutik eitz to be tome midrabanan, the particular tashmish of this pshutik eitz has to be not just a simple kli on which you put things or in things. It's got to be, in the terms of Chazal, it's got to be mishamish odom and mishamish shel odom. That means that the person, his body, actually has to use the kli. For instance, a table. You use the table with your body by leaning on it. Some say because you put your food, and your food is like you put your food on it. Also, it's mishamish shel odom. You put your cutlery, you put your fork and your plate on it. So it's mishamish you, and it's mishamish you, mishamshim. That sort of complex arrangement is metame even a pshutik eitz midrabanan. And that's what we're dealing with here. Says the Mishnah, Aruba shel nach toimim, a baker's tray. Some people say aruchos, different girisois, but the word is an aruba, which is a type of tray or board on which the baker arranges his bread and shapes it and takes it to the oven. Then that is tome under the rule of pshutik eitz midrabanan, because that is the typical complex arrangement, complex tashmish of a poshut, which makes it tome midrabanan. V'shel baalei botim tahiros. However, the standard domestic tray in a house, not in a professional baker, is tahor, because here, in order for the pshutik eitz midrabanan rules to kick in, not only does it have to be mishamish odom and mishamish mishamshom, it also has to have a certain tzuras hakli, which indicates more of a complex tzuras hakli. And your standard baker's home kitchen tray, it being a kli poshut, is not considered enough to have a tzuras hakli to which the rabbanon attached to midrabanan. However, says the Mishnah, sirkon or kirkamon, if you actually painted the tray, sirkon or kirkamon are different types of paint and varnish, lacquers, then you've now developed the kli into a more choshva type of kli, and then despite the fact that it's poshut, it's tameos. Now the next two lines leave out for the moment, because what I want to do is contrast this din of arubos with the din which we pick up in 2 lines' time of sirud shel nach toimim. Sirud is something very similar to an aruba. Slightly lesser use, not quite sure. This is also a type of tray. And here again we see sirud shel nach toimim tome, because again that's a pshutik eitz under the rules that pshutik eitz tome midrabanan. And again we see the same pattern of shel baalei botim tahor. However, here painting and lacquering and varnishing isn't going to be enough. To change the baalei botim sirud into a kli, which is tome, you've actually got to turn it into a kli kibble. If you put a rim, from the word gifufin, on all 4 sides, it's tome. I'll come back to the din of daf shel nach toimim, which is a separate din. After you've put a rim round the 4 sides, nifratz meruach achas, one of those rims breaks off, so now hasn't got 4 sides, tar, because it goes back to being a pshutik eitz. That's quite simple. Rabbi Shimon Omer, he says, this sirud of the baalei botim, which is Torah, if it's got a specific function, you take the dough and you koritz the dough. Koritz means you actually cut it up into little pieces and you shape them on the sirud. You've now developed the tashmish of this kli into something more complex. Then it matches the din of sirud shel nach toimim, and it's mekabel tumah midrabanan, despite the fact that it's a poshut. Mishnah adds on, some people say this is a standard rolling pin, but then it's very difficult to know why a rolling pin should be mekabel tumah, even midrabanan. You don't put anything on it or in it, under all rules, this should be tahor. And that's the kasha the Gaon says. The Gaon learns that the marach actually is not a rolling pin. It's another type of tray, marach, on which you're oirich the lechem, and it's a pshute kli eitz, but because you're oirich lechem on it, so it's very similar to the sirud and the arubas before, and therefore it is tamei. Let's just go back to the bit we left out. Daf shel nach toimim shekvoi bekoisel Rabbi Eliezer metar v'chachamim metamim. This is a shelf, a baker's shelf, and you fixed it to the wall. Now, we've said before, when you have a kli which is makabel tumah and you fix it to the karka, that does not make it tahor. If something was a kli and was able to be makabel tumah, fixing it, being mechabel karka, is not retire it. Because that is, as long as you can still have its original tashmish in its state of being mechabel karka. Now, then there wouldn't be a machlokes. If we're dealing with a plain piece of wood, which is only tomei midrabanan under the pshute kli eitz rules, then a chule alma moida, that fixing it to a wall would be matayr it legamri. So the Gemara comes to the maskana. The Gemara comes to the maskana that this case of daf shel nach toimim shekvoi bekoisel, actually, the Gemara says about Bashat of Samach Vav Amud Aleph, is not talking about a wooden tray. We're now, just for these two lines, have gone back to matchas. It's in this Mishnah because we're dealing with baker's trays. So you've got a kli shel matchas, which is of course tomei midaraisa, and the normal rule is when you fix this shelf to the wall, it's still makabel tumah because you can still use it as a shelf. So the chachamim's view that it's tomei is the standard view. Rabbi Eliezer says that the din of mechubal, actual something which is actually mechubal a karka, it's not relevant anymore what your kavanas were, what your meyachad is, and what something which is mechubal a karka, the mitzias has a din of karka, and that cannot be. It's lost its shem kli by the very fact that it's mechubal, nothing to do with your intention. Even if something became mechubal a karka automatically by a machine or whatever, without there being any kavan of the odom to be mechaber lekarka, Rabbi Eliezer holds, once mechuber lekarka, you have a din of karka, you've lost your shem kli, and it cannot be mekabel tumah. And that's